Expressions. What a wire expression is easier way to wire. Period. Remember this? Sign, chip, turret, real simple stuff. Becomes one gun fires. Now, people always tell you to use an expression, they never tell you how to. And the documentation on it is rather horrible. So I'm going to give you a real quick, I'm going to make that work with an expression. It's very simple, it's not actually very hard. Unless it is very hard for you, and then in which case stop playing Gary's mod. Alright. You hit new expression. It's going to give you this sheet right here. 60 lines of nothing. Label, inputs, outputs, and a file name. So let's label this turret fire. And copy the same thing here. Inputs and outputs. What are you going to tell this what are you going to give this expression, and what do you want this expression to do with that? So we're going to give it a ranger. So now you type in what you're giving it. What's giving this information? The only thing here is a ranger. Now you have to capitalize the first letter of every input and output, and you have to, when you write them in the lines, you have to do the same. So what are we outputting? Turret or fire. We're outputting fire, because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to fire the turret. Okay. So now, every one of these lines, by default, is an if-then statement. If, and then you have to draw a little arrow like that, and that means then. You could actually write the word if in front if it helps you out, but you don't have to. Assume it's there. So here we go. If ranger, and now go back to, like, I don't know, 3rd, 4th grade. If ranger, now it defaults to 0. As soon as you walk in front of the ranger, it tells the distance away. So 0 is not firing. We all know that already. So if the ranger reports to this expression anything greater than the little mouth, greater than 0, little arrow for then capital fire will equal 1. So we're gonna hook the ranger up to this. It's gonna say ranger, and this is the ranger. And if the ranger is greater than 0, then fire is equal to 1. And it may work with one. You hit validate. Oh, I forgot something. Gotta put a semicolon. When you use an if-then statement, you have to use a semicolon. Validate, successfully validated, save it. Come on. Alright. We may get to skip the step here, but I'll check. Alright, point to the expression. It says ranger. It's the only input. It's asking me for input. So there's the ranger. And now I'm going to take the fire from that, and it's going to go to this and say fire. It's the only output. And you see what it's doing? It's firing all the time. The reason is we didn't tell it in the expression not to fire. Expressions are funny in that way, I hear. Basically what we've got to do now is we've got to give the opposite of this. We've got to say ranger is equal to 0, which it is by default, then fire is equal to 0, semicolon. Validate that. Says it's fine. Update. Let's rewire it. Alright, I know what I did wrong. This should be a double equal sign. There you go. The double equal sign means you're asking what it's equal to. You're not telling it. If you write ranger equals 0, that means you're telling this expression that the ranger is 0, no matter what. When you put a double equal, you're asking it what the ranger is equal to. And if it is, then fire equals 0. So that's pretty much the beans, gentlemen. You could do anything you can imagine with an if-then statement. Yeah, want to see one of my more complicated ones? I'll try to explain it. Tank tracking. Let's open that up. Right. 7 lines. And what these lines are pretty much telling you is if the bearing is greater than or equal to 3, then right is -1, left is +1. You have no idea what that means. What that means is when you put a beacon sensor, which I haven't done a tutorial on yet, if you are to the right, a positive bearing is to the right of whatever I put this on, a tank, then the wheels will spin in opposite directions until you pass 3, and then it'll reset to 0. We'll get to that later. You've learned the basics of expressions. It's just an if-then statement. You have to worry about your syntax, which everyone on the Tricky tutorial forums and hopefully on the servers will help you with. That might have been a little bit too big a one to go into at this point. Speed converter? Here we go. Here's a nice one. Speed conversions. Oh, that's the gay one. Never mind. That's gay. Where is it? In my old RPM calculator. People want to calculate the engine RPM. This is what that looks like. What this is saying is you're going to give it the RPM. Well, it's going to output RPM to a screen. You're giving it roll from a gyroscope. It's going to... You always put what you want to output first. If you're not using an if-then statement, which these are not using if-then. So you want to output RPM, goes first. RPM is going to equal. And this $, that means the delta rectified. So you won't find that written anywhere. Delta rectified of the roll multiplied by 3.6 equals RPM. And then below that you'll see the RPM equals floor RPM, which just rounds it down. It's just doing math for me. It's just getting rid of 6 chips or 4 chips, whatever we require to do this. You'd have to you have to spawn a delta chip, you have to hook it to the roll, then you have to get a multiply chip, and you have to get a constant value chip, then you'd have to get a floor chip, and hook those all up. But here it is right here. Nice and small and straight. And expressions do work much faster than several chips wired together. So it is the best way to go. Play with them. They are very powerful tools.